This is how I turned my game from this to this. One year ago, I came across a game called Manifold Garden, a 3D puzzle game with a very abstract and very beautiful art style. This really caught my attention and really inspired me to think about bizarre and massive scale environments and weird architecture. I really liked the idea of these black and white environments that made Manifold Garden's art style extremely simple yet very visually appealing, and really gave off that gigantic scale of an infinite void. So I began work on a new project. I booted up Unity and designed a black outline shader that applies to every single edge of every object. And I also designed some environments that felt very industrial and large. Now the whole purpose of the Manifold Garden was to manipulate gravity to solve mind-bending puzzles and the whole shebang. And this really got me thinking, what other puzzle mechanics would have a lot of potential to get the players thinking about how they can solve them? And while I was watching the Manifold Garden playthrough, I noticed that every puzzle places quite a bit of emphasis on these cubes. They are used to grow trees, power doors, and basically everything in the game. I also noticed that the cubes would change color every time the gravity mechanic was used. And I wondered, what if you were able to combine properties of two cubes and make a new cube with those combined properties to solve puzzles? I played around with this idea and eventually settled on combining colors to make new colors. For example, mixing red and blue gives purple, blue and yellow makes green, yellow and red makes orange. So I coded a little system where the cubes of those colors can be combined to make a new cube of that combined color. Of course, you can also undo your action by splitting the color into its constituents. Now I was left with quite a big question. What do I do with all this? Well, I still wanted the cube to be able to power machinery like doors, and I also wanted it to fit into the sort of industrial feel of the game. So I designed an industrial door that is powered by a cogwheel, and inside this cogwheel you need the cube that corresponds to the correct color and activates the door. I made a couple more levels with this puzzle mechanic, but quickly realized that it got very tiring just making factory environments, that I eventually got kinda bored with it and decided to switch it up a little bit. I split the game into 5 individual chapters, each with their own different setting. Chapter 1 I had already set it to be an industrial factory. Chapter 2 I really wanted to make a very large city. Chapter 3 I settled on making a cave system or mining system. Chapter 4 I had a bit of trouble deciding, but I ended up choosing a cargo ship. And Chapter 5 I was the most excited about because it was all the way in a space station in outer space. However, I realized that just chunking these locations all together didn't really make any sense. So my solution was to make a story to bundle all these locations and make the transition between them more reasonable. It was around this time that I got into games like Portal and the Half-Life franchise, especially Portal 2, a fantastic game about robots with witty humor, and it really caught my attention. And the transition between the environments is just really seamless. For example, when Wheatley takes control of the facility, he becomes corrupted and punches the player and GLaDOS into the darkest depths of the facility, where you proceed to learn the old version of Aperture and of the tragic backstory of GLaDOS. Thus, I made a story about robots as well. However, I wanted it to be a more adventurous type of story to complement the different locations of Colorblind and not just confined to a factory. I wanted the world where humans are extinct and society is replaced entirely with robots and androids. But after a terrible science experiment that the robots made, the world is wiped of all robots except a few, and the world is devoid entirely of color, except for a mysterious material called corium. There are 6 types of corium, each with their own color and purpose. The very few surviving robots, and by very few I mean only 5 robots survived, they don't know of each other's existence. About 15 years after the incident, one of the robots, Neuron, makes his own robot, Colin, who is the protagonist you play as. With his help, you are able to navigate the underground facility and make it to the city above the factory. Now here came a new challenge: character designs and writing. I wanted to make the robots to have a humanoid shape, so I designed a robot humanoid model, which was very inspired by the robots in the show Murder Drones. And I forgot to mention the story itself was also inspired by Murder Drones. Here's the result. However, I didn't really like the model because it looked a bit too simple. So I designed a new model that had an eye with moving parts, long arms and a legless body. And the legless body also solved an upcoming issue, which was animation. I was kind of fearful that the animation would take up too much time of development since I had downloaded animations from Mixamo.com and it was quite a pain to work with. So getting rid of the legs would greatly decrease my workload because I don't have to animate the legs. But I still didn't really like working with these smooth and linear types of animations because the humanoid rigging system is kind of dumb. It was around this time I remembered Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You can see from this clip that Miles Morales isn't actually moving very smoothly, and his animation actually runs at a slower frame rate than a movie, yet his animation is still so good. And does anybody remember watching those stop motion LEGO videos? I got some inspiration in that, and worked on an animation system where the character's rigs will teleport at frame intervals and will not smoothen it out. As for the character's voice, I went onto Fiverr and got Barrel of Monkeys to do a high-pitched friendly boy voice. The next character I wanted a sort of comedic duo to lighten up the game's tone. And what better example than Sans and Papyrus from Undertale. These two characters are probably my favorite comedic duo because they're just polar opposites. Sans is a very smart and powerful guy, but he is incredibly lazy and loves doing nothing. Whereas Papyrus is extremely ambitious but incredibly dumb. Papyrus basically spends most of the game disappointed at Sans' laziness, and Sans spends most of his time making jokes and refusing to help him with his unrealistic goals. Similarly, I made two characters with the same chemistry. I named them Nukla and Kulex, two siblings who are trapped in a cave and have to wander around the cave for a very long time. Kulex went a little bit mad and decided to construct death traps for whoever wants to enter their cave. When Kulex asks Nukla for help, she refuses and basically does nothing and constantly insults her brother. When the player does eventually enter the cave, Kulex tries to kill the player with the spike traps, but unfortunately, he built them entirely wrong because he is incredibly dumb.
Wow, look what we have here! Another one of our delicious meals to feast on!
For the 50th time, we don't eat robots to survive.
And for the millionth time, I'm right, you're wrong!
Whatever, nerd. Listen, I know you don't want to be in here, neither do I. But my brother is too dumb to understand facts and logic. He doesn't even know what food looks like. So he just assumes everything is food. Name's Nukla, by the way. His name is Kulex. Quite a dumb name, to be honest. Good luck with his stupidity. Later.
As for the remaining characters, they're really important to the story and I won't spoil it for you. Anyway, so I developed some assets and models for the city in Chapter 2, some minecarts and railings for Chapter 3, industrial parts for Chapter 4, and lots of sci-fi machines for the space station in Chapter 5. Now, of course, I can't have the entire game be just set around placing cubes and cogwheels, so there needs to be more variety. And I was playing through Portal 2 when I came across these laser puzzles. I toyed around with this concept and eventually decided to make a laser with this sort of electricity particle. However, I wondered how I can add a twist to it besides being able to block the laser. So I made lasers of the 6 different colors, and each laser can only be blocked by that color of the laser. For example, red lasers can only be blocked by red cubes, purple lasers can only be blocked by purple, and the same for our colors. This was quite a breath of fresh air for the puzzles and really added a whole lot of potential. It was around halfway through development that I realized that the game just wasn't that atmospheric, so I needed to add some music to my game. I got a lot of inspiration for Portal 2 and Minecraft Story Mode, if anybody remembers that game. The music has the robotic and cold vibe of Portal 2 and has the retro and synth tone of Minecraft Story Mode. What you're hearing now is one of my favorite tracks from Colorblind OST, which plays during Chapter 3. Now here comes the very painful part of developing a game, which is marketing. I've noticed that the incredibly short games that I spend minimal effort on gets a lot of plays, while the giant long-term projects don't really get a lot of traction. So I turned to Steam, the most popular game distribution platform in the gaming industry, and that's where I wanted to publish it. I was kinda shocked to learn that it actually costs $100 for every game that you publish on Steam, but it could be worse. At the beginning of the year, I had my store page set up and plugged in a whole lot of screenshots and a very short trailer. By the way, please add Colorblind to your wishlist by clicking the link below. It's completely free and it only takes 5 seconds. I'm trying to get to 500 wishlists and there will be a special surprise when it does. Development of the remainder of Colorblind will take around about 2 months, and I plan to release it by this September. So please wishlist it and hit the subscribe button real quick so I can continue doing work like this.